My name is Jennifer Vincent. I'm an artist and art teacher living in New Orleans. I have a dog who might start whimpering. It's about his time to go out. I'm sorry. I am a self-recognized autistic with ADHD, with confirmed diagnosis of ADHD, narcolepsy with cataplexy, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and endometriosis. Autism impacts me in many ways. I'm a high masker and often hide my traits, though I also navigate daily challenges such as sensitivities to noise, light, and smells, misphonia, I hate the sound of an AC, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, and difficulties with proprioception. So that's like being aware of things going on in your body, such as when you have to eat or when you have to use the restroom. I began painting at age of 3, encouraged by my mother, who recognized that drawing and painting could support my fine motor skills when I struggled to hold a pencil properly. Today, despite reduced grip strength and hand tremors, I continue to create and teach art as both my passion and profession. I'm proud to be ADHD because it has given me a unique perspective on the world, one that deeply informs both my art and my teaching. My special interests include art in all its forms, quantum physics, psychology, politics, and neurology. I also have a strong sense of justice and moral responsibility, and I find that living within a capitalistic society often conflicts with my values and impacts my mental health, especially right now. For me, art is more than a career. It is a way to cope, process, and make meaning of my lived experiences. Through both my personal practice and my work with students, I seek to affirm that creativity can be a powerful tool for self-expression, healing, and connection. So I've always loved science and have spent considerable amount of time learning about theoretical physics and neurology as a special interest. I like the observer effect in quantum physics, especially because it validated my feelings of a higher power and organization to the world around me. No perspective, no matter how chaotic it has been, like living with these things and in the world right now, I believe that each person's individual perspective shapes the world around us. What we give our attention to impacts our experiences. I've just been disabled my whole life and have experienced many tribulations. I have been a victim at every stage in the lifespan and believe it to be directly related to the fact that I don't always understand people's intentions or read through the lines of communication. The observer effect helped explain how people could be so cruel and that each person's worldview and actions shape societal beliefs and constructs. I was raised Catholic, although I no longer identify with any religion. Reading the Bible and sacred texts across religions has influenced me in that according to the Bible, Jesus came from the light above. And I love that. It's according to the Gospel of Thomas, God resides inside everyone. A great friend recently told me when I was asking about their beliefs and how what's their big theory of the universe. He responded with, "We are God's disassociative mechanism of allowing all these things to exist without him carrying the burden or her carrying the burden uh, of experiencing them, all these different uh, experiences that each individual has as an infinite and instantaneous quantum matrix. In other words, we are all participatory and contributing to what is being observed. So knowing that it has helped me cope with being disabled and neurodivergent. I've learned to honor my experiences and perspective even when others doubt it. Um, Holding on to these values in a chaotic capitalistic world helps me to feel sadness versus becoming sadness or giving up on my life. I know suicidal rates are high among autistics, and I have uh, so that's very important to me to find meaning. Um, I want to show how art and meditation supports resilience. So I believe through transcendental meditation, I have created space within myself to experience emotions versus becoming them. I often feel like a vessel that spirit moves through. As an artist, I love having aesthetic experiences, which is where you kind of get lost in the sauce of creating. Um, During art making, time slows down, sensory overload quiets, and my mind becomes clear. While painting, I focus on my brushstrokes and the direction. It's like being transported to another world, free of worry and strife, which make much like in transcendental meditation. I actually walk my students through these steps to help center their bodies and have introduced them to the benefits of meditation. They don't seem that into it yet, but I'm trying. I do this because I know that many of them are in pain and hungry. For example, we just lost a student this past week to probably about 15 years old, not one of my students personally, but you can tell it impacted the mood and morale of the students around me. Um, so I believe in meditation for them because I know they're in pain, and personally, art making reduces my meltdowns and burnout. It's the only thing that silences all the noise around me. Sometimes when I'm overwhelmed, it feels like swimming through sound and I can't stop swimming. Sometimes I begin painting without understanding quite yet what the driving force is, which is something I love. Art making just gives me a time to process an experience, and I may not know that I'm addressing it in that moment. But then once I look at it in its completed state, it may even be a year later that I realize, wow, this is what I was going through. This makes a lot of sense. It will never not amaze me once I make the connections from my experiences to the outcome of my painting, pottery, or illustrations. Most of my artwork centers around transcendence these days. Um, I have contemplated the universe from the perspective of a crawfish in paint and the cycles of life and death in pottery. So I have this painting where it's crawfish's explanation of the universe from a crawfish perspective. And I often say if I were to come back in another life form, I would like to be a snail, just because they observe things so slowly. So every piece of art I create stems from a deep longing to understand. The words of others do not always make sense to me. I'm late to realize when someone is rude or mean. So drawing conclusions from my art helps me to process these moments. Um, So I do not have a formal diagnosis of autism. I went to a specialist a couple years ago. She was a child specialist who said I had traits, but that I couldn't be autistic because I had friends. She didn't ask about the quality of my friendships or anything like that. Um, that was really upsetting and sad. But I've talked to many people, and my doctors now actually agree with me. It's in my medical chart. Um, and it makes a lot of sense for me. I've spent years trying to figure out what was wrong with me, reading psych- psychology books and abnormal psychology books, and never finding something that related that stuck out to me. Autism was just not on my radar, despite having relatives like who are autistic with firm diagnosis. So I do things to self accommodate myself. So I wear my over the ear headphones when things are too distracting and loud. I can better concentrate and navigate my surroundings wearing these. Otherwise, I get lost quite easily. I keep tangles, my favorite fidget, in my purse at all times, or in my hand, or my back pocket. And I actually like sharing them with my students too when I have other autistic students. And if I notice they're having trouble getting started or they're having difficulty concentrating, I find a tangle and I give it to them to use. And that seems to help quite a bit, which I think is really amazing. Um, so I am also ADHD. So my organizing systems in my classroom and studio are more about how and why versus when and where. My studio is a kind of a mess right now. We can't see it beyond the computer screen, and I'm going to keep it that way. um, so I pace my workflow, and I actually use Chat GPT to put my lessons into the proper format, which saves me hours of time when prepping for teaching. And I still mask and camouflage my autistic traits while I'm teaching, but my students pretty much know that I'm autistic, especially because I have difficulty recognizing faces. I experienced face blindness, and so that was something quite interesting to overcome in the beginning of the semester. Now I've gotten their cemented their faces to their names a little bit more, so it's not so complicated. But having to explain to someone, "Oh, I don't know who you are," after I've seen them for 30 days, that's really embarrassing. I can typically hold a meltdown back until I'm in private. I've had meltdowns at work and a couple times in the presence. But I felt supported by her, and we laughed it off a few days later when I was left overwhelmed and had addressed the priority task. I've been very open with my administrators and coworkers about being ADHD and why I do not have access to a formal diagnosis. It's just not within my reach. There are doctors who specialize in Louisiana on adults, but the payment is like $1,000 or more. So why do I feel the need to pay to get some to for validation? And so I just have given up on that. It's not accessible, so I'm not that worried about it. And especially like with things going on, I don't know that I want to be recognized as autistic with a formal diagnosis and a psychological profile in my medical chart. It's very scary time. So I'm asked selectively when I'm able. I've learned to ask for clarification when needed and be emailed instructions and lists of tasks. I used AskJan.com to create my own accommodations in work and ask my psychiatrist to request them on my behalf. So I actually have some questions for you. What environments, situations, or tasks consistently drain your energy or overwhelm your senses?
Well, certainly anywhere where I have to fill out forms. Um, my brain just does, my mind doesn't work that way. I don't organize reality that way. Uh, I usually have to take quite a bit of time to recover after a situation like that, which is, of course, usually in a situation where there are further stressors like a doctor's office or administrative stuff or whatever.
Yeah, so I just wear my headphones and bring a tingle. I don't take my headphones off even in the doctor's like office. And sometimes people get I see one comment in the chat or a couple comments. Me too. We are working together to keep a community wanting to live and thrive. That's so very true. I'm assuming that's in response to having. And I love the activity of channeling art as a form of a step of processing. Me too. Medical appointments or when I have to interact with very directly with touching by strangers. Large meetings with a lot of background noise. I would agree with that. It's kind of hard to put headphones on during large meetings because there's so much going on and you want to be able to hear. So I relate to that greatly. Um, excuse me. So when do you feel most at ease, focused, or supported? What conditions make that possible? So I'm asking when you feel most at ease, focused, or supported.
For me, just being validated, if someone, for example, at my doctor's office, they know how I feel about forms now, and so someone helps me
Fill
fill
them
them
out.
out.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's really great. Yeah, I don't like filling out forms either. um, so being validated, I think that's a big one. Validation to me comes from like my second family, my friends. My family, initially, when I shared with them that I thought I was autistic, my family was like very supportive and was like, this makes a lot of sense. And then shortly after that, they became combative and disagreed with me. And we would get into these big arguments surrounding that and didn't speak for like months at a time. and we're finally now in a much better place. My mom has told me that she has acknowledged that she has a special needs daughter, which I think is kind of like also like I don't necessarily like the term special needs. I think like I have support needs maybe. Um and those support needs change and fluctuate. So I don't like the functioning labels as well. I think functioning labels are a disservice because one person might function really high one day and then function really low a couple hours later. I know that's the truth for me. So I'm very protective of who I see professionally and get help from. I really love the psychiatrist and social worker that I've worked with. I've actually shared with them different Casey Sparks meetings, the ones that are for physicians and clinicians, and they've gone and watched and participated. They've read part of an excerpt of uh, Neurotypical Studies, a New Paradigm, a great textbook that I found a lot of affirmation and validation in once I read. And that's available online and Audible. I can write it in the chat. Let me write that real quick. When I'm in a special interest topic or mode, I am great. When around a more commonplace interaction, then I'm able to be genuine. That is nice. Yeah, I agree with that. It is a lot easier to talk about our special interests because we like info dumping and are just so excited, I think, you know. So let me write this book down. It is neurodiversity studies, a new paradigm. And they go more into the PDA, which I like to the PDA profile of autism, which I like to term as a persistent drive for autonomy, although it stands for pathological demand avoidance. I think that a persistent driver for autonomy is much more of an accurate statement and reflection of what that actually feels like to experience. I know I do fit the PDA profile. I fawn. I tried to remember and use like toothpaste that doesn't hurt and toothbrushes that don't hurt. Because it's very sensitive area apparently. For me, the facade that some people put out, this is just coming from the chat. For me, the facade that some people put on that they are safe when they are not, especially in work environments, drain me. Because I feel like I must help them maintain that front. The fake smile takes so much effort for me. Yes, I would agree with that. For me, the fake smile is kind of like it's so ingrained and indoctrined. Like I don't know when I'm fake smiling and when I'm not. Um, but yes, I would agree with that. It is very draining to be inauthentic and have these mundane conversations when there's so much more going on that I am experiencing from different sensory input that is distracting, and it's very draining to concentrate and remember to blink and remember to look the person in the eye, or I like to look someone in the forehead right here, so it's not necessarily looking at them in the eye, but it appears that I am. So how comfortable are you expressing your needs to others, and what makes that easier or harder? So, how comfortable are you with expressing your needs to others? And I can type these in the chat too. I need to assess the safety of the other, and then I either feel very safe or don't bother. Yeah, fake smile. As a primatologist, I know smiles were originally fear and grimaces. That's me for sure. That's so funny. I love primatology. I'm a huge fan of Bigfoot, actually. I think Bigfoot is real, and I've spent a lot of time in the woods looking and observing the woods around me. I even found a nest once on my parents' property. Sorry, sidetrack. It's just I like primatology a lot. I've read like stories about bonobos and how intelligent they are. It was a big special interest of mine in the past, and I still love Bigfoot. I even have made artwork about Bigfoot. And it's like these plates where I carved the Bigfoot face in, and they're Technicolor. So I like that a lot. So it's not so scary. It's more about the fun and uh, referencing that anything is possible, because I do think we live in a holographic universe, which is another favorite book of mine by Michael Talbot that's entitled The Holographic Universe. So I'll write that in the chat as well, because that was something major that influenced me early on when I read that.
I hear a recurring theme in meetings about psychological safety.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think somebody mentioned that just now.
Yeah, so they
Like,
needed to assess the safety of the other. And then I either feel very safe or don't bother. So how do you assess the safety of another? I wonder. Is what I'm curious about, because maybe I should incorporate doing that more with people.
well, I think that that's the reason it's such a curious thing is because there's a lot of um, I don't know. I think there is like a lot of misleading. Like, people will know what to say, or maybe there are policies about um, this is a safe space, or these declarations, that this is this is safe, or there's no consequences for speaking up. Um, you know, when in fact it may not be that way. Um, and so no matter how much you say it, uh, if you take it at face value and you do something, say something, and then you're just ignored, then that makes you feel even worse. Um, but yeah, at the same time, it's uh saying something, people can pretend like they're accommodating or pretend that they care, but then sort of do this other thing, where they're not really liking what you have to say, and they in more subtle ways like let you know, and then so it's almost like a setup for being hurt. uh
Mhm.
so that's why I think it's such an interesting point, is that how do you even assess that?
They're saying in the chat, in a holographic universe, it is often obvious if someone is really safe. And then it's seeing the patterns of behavior and sensing. I don't always see those patterns of behavior. I've ended up at once because I just misread the situation completely. And that was really, really embarrassing and awful position to be in. I definitely left, but it's just because I didn't pick up on that that was what was about to happen. And I just thought we were going like to someone's house to continue partying or having fun. But with some people, I just don't feel safe to express my needs. I know sometimes I don't know exactly how I know, so find I doubt my own perception. I think, why am I being so judgmental? I should trust this person more. But somehow I know very deep down that a certain person isn't going to hear me. And I relate to that quite a bit. I've had people lie to me, and I know that they're lying, and it's hard. And then I've had people who lie to me and I don't know that they're lying, and I'm quite gullible at times. But like I find with men it is a little easier to know when they're lying or not, or when they're hiding something. And so I guess that's just pattern recognition. And that's what someone else is saying in the chat is pattern recognition for sure. Unfortunately, it requires a lot of experiences and a lot of suffering from trial and error. And even then, I still get rules to boundaries until they prove safe. Yes. For me, a safe person is someone that won't judge me if I talk about Bigfoot or discuss like being ADHD and neurodivergent. Um, and I'm not met with like comments like, "Oh, we're all a little autistic." A doctor I saw said that when I mentioned to them, and after I saw it was my primary care doctor, and I immediately switched primary care doctors because I didn't like that at all. Uh, and it's now I have a great primary care doctor who listens and understands. uh, I am digging into primatology through Sapolsky, and it is fascinating. Okay, I've never heard of Sapolsky, and so I'll have to write that down. Let me see if I have a pen or paper. Sapolsky. Oh, my pencil broke.
While you search for another pencil, I wanted to say, I think for us, it's also difficult because a lot of us feel someone's essential soul, if you will,
Yes.
and their behavior can be horrendous. Uh,
Yes.
and we can know that it comes from, you know, like it's a coping mechanism or a
Yeah.
survival mechanism, and that gives us empathy. And then in that mix, it becomes difficult to figure out how to navigate that in a healthy way for ourselves.
Yeah. So I think like if you think of the observer effect and how when an atom is observed, it changes its behavior. So I think again, it comes back down to practicing mindfulness and building that awareness within ourselves to have space not only to feel our own emotions, but to feel other people's emotions through empathy and not letting it impact you overall. Um, okay, so how can you reframe self accommodations as an act of creativity and not signs of weakness? I don't know. I've never heard of Robert Sapolsky's books, but someone's saying why zebras don't get ulcers, and I didn't know zebras don't get ulcers, and that's really interesting. Interesting. Zebra is the animal symbol for Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, because it's like we're you often get told like doctors get told in medical school that it's not a if you hear a horse uh trotting near you or running towards you, it's probably not a horse, it's a zebra. um which like it's a patient who has all these symptoms, and so not to overlook it, so they call it zebras instead of horses. I'm still that's one idioms don't always make sense to me, so I don't always get it. But I guess like a horse would be a more normal expectation you hear trotting, whereas a zebra would be less expected. So, sorry, tangle. So yeah, simply put, I am only able to actually self-care alone or when other with other autistic people. I find that true as well. I got lucky and I have quite a few autistic friends, people who have formal diagnoses and people who don't. Some of my students are autistic, and one of them noticed that I picked up on me being autistic without me saying anything. And that was really validating. He's like, "I said, why you always shake your leg?" And I was like, "Yes." And he's the cutest thing. So he comes stand next to me in the mornings and talks, and but they're just very different from one another as far as where they fall on the spectrum. And so that's really interesting to see as well as how different people fall and finding comfort within the range of representation that comes out of being on the spectrum. Um, I've recently began learning about attachment theory. it's been a game changer in recognizing my own faults and vulnerabilities, whilst also understanding the attachment styles of others. That's really cool. I'll have to educate myself more about attachment styles and attachment theory. I know that, in early childhood, I firm and safe attachment between parents and children is really important. And there's been experiments to explore like attachment theory and with primates and with young children. Like if you hear of like the Russian orphanage experiences and stuff like that. So it's like it makes a lot of sense for us to find community in the safety of others like us. Um, so what would it look like to design your life around how your brain and body work best instead of trying to mask or push through? So, what would it look like to design your life around how your brain and body work best instead of trying to mask or push through? I don't think masking is like the most terrible thing because masking is kind of inherent within us. But, and I think it's kind of like when some I would live on an island with other autistic people and animals. That's cute. Yeah, I would think that would be nice. In a more realistic environment or answer, I guess, might be to do things that center you and practice the meditation, practice the creativity in your art making and honor that, and that helps. I think it helps. Well, I know it helps me to push through. um I'll bring artwork out to me, like in other with me in social situations. I've sold artwork that way, just bringing it with me when like to parties, or like in the past I used to vend a lot and I'd go to this local bar, and I don't drink, but I would go to a local bar and sit out on their patio tables and just draw, and it would just be amazing how many people come up and watch you and just join in conversation with you. So that's really fun. To one fun way for me to make connections. I haven't done it lately, but I have done it in the past, and it's really nice. Um, so, what would it look like to design your life around how your brain and body work best instead of trying to mask or push through? So, I see I would live on an island with other animals and autistic people, but are there any other answers?
Well, often tell people I have a great advantage in that I'm autistic for a living.
Okay. I can I would agree with that. I feel like I'm autistic for a living too. I've never thought about it that way, but it's true, especially like working with other autistic kids, and I work with quite a few. Um, it's really, really helpful to be able to help them, understand that they may be approaching burnout, or for example, because it presents a lot differently. Okay, so I see this video breaks it down for those curious about learning the fundamentals of attachment theory in humans. It's what initiated my curiosity in learning more, very helpful. He breaks down the complexities of attachment theories in humans into easy to understand way. That's cool. Thank you for that. A few years ago when I lived on my own, and I spent a lot of time with people who were very open-minded and curious, people who were open to people and being their selves. I had a deep sense of joy in my life. I danced a lot. I was able to make a lot of artwork and to live slowly, like waking up at dawn and walking in the grass in the park with bare feet and watching and hearing the birds up in the trees, noticing the changes in the seasons. That's beautiful. Before I began treatment for my narcolepsy, it was really hard for me to notice things like that. And I remember starting my medication for the first time and having to ask my mom if something was real or not. So that's really nice that you were able to experience that and honor that within yourself. Um, and I think it's important to walk in the grass bare feet. It's very nice. I'd like to have an extra 2 to 4 hours in a day, but also a norm of bluntness, not brutal honesty. Even often becomes an excuse for cruelty, and I believe that as well. I think 2 to 4 hours in a day extra would be really cool. I don't know if I could stay up that long. My medication, but that's one thing that I find frustrating in life experiences is that my medication only lasts 7 to 8 hours, and there's like 24 hours in a day, so I have to space the medication out to be able to experience like a 10-hour day. But I think an extra 2 to 4 hours of wakefulness would be wonderful. Um, I don't know if anyone here has narcolepsy, but there's actually a medication, and thank you for the link to the neurodiversity studies, a new critical paradigm. Okay, so I had that a little off, but thank you. Um, yeah, so being narcoleptic, I haven't always experienced wakefulness, and it's something that's fleeting with me. So it's a little frustrating. But meditation and art making really helped me. I have fallen asleep making art a couple times, but for the most part, it's able to maintain my wakefulness in a way that nothing else really can touch on. So I find that remarkable. Um, okay, so now I have an exercise that I'd like to do with you all, and it should take maybe 3 to 5 minutes. So it's simply a guided visualization. You want to close your eyes. I can't close my eyes and read at the same time. So you want to close your eyes and think of a time you felt deeply immersed in creating, where the world fell away. Press your feet flat on the floor. Let your shoulders drop and your tongue rest in the bottom of your mouth. And sit in that time where the world melts away. So we're going to sit for about 2 minutes, just with our eyes closed and thinking about that time where the world fell away. All right, so coming back now, 3, 2, 1. You can open your eyes. Now I'd like you to jot down 3 words or share 3 words in the chat that describe how you feel, how that moment felt, and share. Completely integrated. Oh, that's lovely. I see that. Yeah, it felt relieving. That's awesome. For me, it felt very calm and serene. I feel like my shoulders tingling and my right here and my below my ears tingling. transcendence, stillness, attuned. Yes, those are all great things. And I think if we practice just giving ourselves a minute or two in the morning to sit quietly and reflect in a moment that not when the world melts away, can be very helpful for us. Refresh, yes. Refresh is a great term. All of me in tune, focus, timeless. I love that. Um, yeah, all of those things. So, I want to revisit the observer effect. Your presence as an observer shapes the world around you. It is a fact that observing a situation changes it. So I believe creating space within ourselves, reflection, art making, and meditation can help us to focus without judgment when challenges arise so that we may transcend them. So creativity is not a luxury, it's a survival tool, an anchor, and it empowers ourselves. I've seen paintings done with coffee grinds. Art, it's accessible. So I want to encourage everyone to carry their observations and creative practices forwards. I'd like to thank you and invite this for the remaining time for questions.
I know that a number of us see things in what we would call a holographic way. For
Hmm.
example, if I look at something even for a short time, it becomes covered in billowing light. And in
Yes.
fact, I never see darkness. When I go into a completely black room and
Oh,
shut my
wow.
eyes, I
Yeah.
continue to see those lights. So I was curious about your or whoever's how those additional senses actually work their way into people's art or creativity.
Well, I have a painting I can show you right now that I'm working on. It's in progress, and I can talk a little bit about that. It's a project for 1 point perspective and teaching my students surrealism, which is the act like dreamlike imagery, and a typical 1 point perspective, a very flat space that is drawn to look three-dimensional. I have a black hole at the end of mine. So it said, like we're on the end of a black hole and all these things sweeping through, but then my cat and my dog are kind of not going into the black hole. And so they're grounding for me. And then the actual artwork in the room, the nod to Monet's water lilies on the ceiling that's still and it's not moving, I think is uh relevant in that. Mhm. Like I see things in that all things are unstable, all structures are unstable. And what's beautiful about that is that it means speaks to that we can change and evolve over time as a species, as a person, um, in our creativity even. Um, yeah, so that's how I would answer that. I also noticed that whenever I'm in a room in darkness, when I was little, before I began my treatment for narcolepsy, I would see these dots, and it was like dots of light and green and red and blue floating towards me from my ceiling. And I would hear music going to sleep every night. And I still hear music from this is the little speak and so I have misophonia and I don't like the sound of ACs, but sometimes it turns into the sound of music. And that's kind of interesting. And it's also kind of surreal. And so I think our perspective shapes the world around us. And that we each have such unique experiences that anything is possible. Truly, I think anything is possible. If we work together and come together, we can make a change in this world for the better in the way that it's currently heading. I think that we can do it. I think we can overcome. Art can communicate like its own visual language and can hold a lot of metaphor, meaning, symbolism, and can be a practice of exploration for myself. I would speak in images instead of words if I could. I agree with that. There's a painting behind me. I'm not sure if you can see it all. Let me turn my camera some. But it's on my mantle, and it's me getting diagnosed with narcolepsy, and I painted it 10 years after my diagnosis, and it was very bland and like more of a burnt sienna color and like natural flesh tones. And then I went back in 10 years later and repainted it and added the circle making tool on the forehead to represent the third eye in transcendence. And so it became this image where I took from whenever I was falling asleep and could barely take the picture to maybe me being in a moment of stillness and meditation with, and overcoming the symptoms that plagued me. Um, and meditation does help. I'm very tired today. I'm out of my medicine, but I slept a little late and I meditated before this. And I think I had some coffee too. And I think that helped me a lot. I teach filmmaking to autistic students, which has been transformative for me. Their non-judgment and genuine hearts have helped me to be a better filmmaker. The films created in our space are a true collaboration. I have had students say that they feel seen and heard, and this is the same experience for me. It's hard to explain the magic that happens between us. I would agree with that. And then there's another comment that says, I have always had a very canny ability to visualize, and my other neurodivergent friends always played language games, so creating seems paradoxical, seeming paradoxical situations in art has been important for me. Someone described a negative candlelight as the only source of darkness in the room, and I can imagine the negative toss of shadow onto an otherwise light space. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I I'm a firm believer in art making as a form of therapy, and it's a universal language that we use, and we can communicate ideas to one another without speaking. I have a few students who do not speak English, and I don't speak their language, but still we're able to work together and create this art project, and their smile speaks volumes. Any other questions?
If you don't mind, narcolepsy is so misunderstood. I had an occasion to learn more about it when someone special in my life actually had it. Um, I would love for you to talk some more if you're comfortable about
Sure.
how that appears and kind of what the misconceptions are.
Well, misconceptions are I don't necessarily fall asleep in the middle of speaking, even though I'm really tired right now. I won't necessarily fall asleep while eating, although I've woken up with like cookies in my mouth and stuff like that. When I was younger. So narcolepsy is caused by an autoimmune. The type that I have is caused by an autoimmune response and an attack on the body that destroys an area in the hypothalamus that creates a certain neurotransmitter called orexin. Um, and That's what I meant to speak on earlier. So orexin controls sleep and wakefulness and your weight and body temperature. And so with narcolepsy, you don't really have as much control over that. And with autism, you don't really, you may struggle with temperatures too. So I think that's kind of interesting. I'm kind of hot right now, and I turned the AC off so I wouldn't have any background noise. And I'm in Louisiana. Uh, but yeah, so narcolepsy. I have narcolepsy type 1. There are two types of narcolepsy. Type 1, you have cataplexy with it, and type 2, you do not. Type 2 can occur from like birth, I think, and type 1 is more like environmental factor like head trauma, a viral illness that can trigger the immune response that destroys the orexin production area in the hypothalamus. And so I fall down or I may lose muscle tone in response to emotional stimuli. So I can be laughing and full of joy and just fall down completely to the ground. And sometimes I'll fall asleep, sometimes I'll get right back up. Oh, thank you. Yeah, that I think that they're in the chat are talking about the film filming. It's really neat. Someone was just saying it sounds like an amazing experience and would love to have been a student. Yeah, I'd love to be a student in film as well. Um, but yeah, with narcolepsy and cataplexy, there are emotional triggers that I don't have control over how my body responds, and that can be really scary. And I've hurt myself a couple times. I've given myself like second degree burns from cataplexy. I've nearly broken my nose. I cracked my elbow. So you can get hurt with narcolepsy. There have been times when I couldn't cross the street, and with Ehlers-Danlos, there's times when I'm more fatigued for no reason when I'm having a flare and my hips hurt and it's really difficult to walk. That's been happening for like the last 2 weeks for me, and yeah, so it's overwhelming, but I find when I go back to art making that I feel more steady. I'm not as likely to have a collapse or drop my pencil. My hands do shake. I'm not able to draw straight lines as accurately as I once was. But that's why I teach, because teaching bridges the gap where I can share my creativity and spark a new generation to be creative. Um, while I'm losing my ability to create in a way. Pottery is very easy. It's much easier than painting for me now. Although I can still paint and draw really, really well. But I've been doing this for a long time, since I was 3. So,
I'd like to ask a question about art and
yes.
whether or not it's something that, because I do recall that you're saying you sort of learned this or you discovered this when you're a child or very young. Uh, do you think that that's something that that everyone can do, or
Oh,
for some
yes.
people, do they have to like try to learn it, or
I
maybe
think
it's different for some people and not others?
I've noticed with my students that one-on-one instruction, they're able to accomplish more when they're not like with their friends and stuff. So I do think it's something that everyone can do. You just have to practice it, just like riding a bike. Like you can be taught the technical skills, or you could learn them on your own just through practice and repetition. And one good tip I have for drawing and painting is that when you're looking at something, you want to look at the object 80% of the time and you're drawing 20% of the time, and that'll improve your accuracy. Something I learned in college. My painting instructor taught it to us.
Okay, so if someone says, "Oh, I'm not, I'm not an artist or I'm not artistic," uh,
Mhm.
then perhaps I guess the main point is, I guess, creation, and
Yeah,
that
creativity
is,
in any
yeah.
forms. Like I said, I've seen people do paintings with coffee grinds, and you might just breaking something can be an act of art. You know, this person says your experience and interpretation of those situations feels very similar to my own, but I have a lot of friends with a lot of derealization troubles, as in they trouble them and they need a solid truth value associated with the experience. Yeah, I think the observer effect can be that truth value that can help you make sense of the experience. So I would suggest diving deeper into that. And Eckhart Tolle also is a great writer and source of information on being present in your life, like, and ignoring certain things like your ego or super ego talking. So I like Eckhart Tolle a lot. I've read a lot of his books. I like self-help books a lot. Okay, so I like what the author Sayaka Murata has said about finding freedom from being a human being. I'll have to write that down because I've never heard of them. Awesome. This has been really great for me.
This was terrific. It was so great to have you.
Thank you.
I'd like to have you come back. There's so many
Okay.
questions I had, and hopefully I didn't hog up too much air. I was so excited. I really had so many things I wanted to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah. But the
It's
solution to
awesome.
that is to have you come back so everyone
Okay.
can ask you what they want to ask you. And I know we'll think about this a lot. I will for sure. Um,
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
gonna
so
go on
appreciate
my
your
day with
time
a
today.
great sense of peace. That's how I feel right now. Very peaceful and tingly. Like I've been
Great.
watching ASMR videos.
Yes, that occurs with frequency in this group, that people feel they become more than the sum of the parts and are safe and warm in a way that they don't usually experience. And I love it that we
Oh,
create that together.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate
Okay, everybody. Well, we have other things coming up. Go to the our Facebook page under Cultural Autism Studies at Yale or Casey, and look under the events tab. You have to kind of scroll over and find it at the far right. Under the events tab, we have listed all of the things coming up. And if you want more information on them, you can actually do a search within the Facebook page, and the ads and the information for things can be found that way.
And will this
And
be
yeah,
available on YouTube, maybe, or
Roger.
Yes, yes. So all our videos, we have to process them so that people are anonymous. So you can't, people speak, they're not able to,
okay, I
watchers
understand.
can't identify who they are. So there's a big process with that. So it does take some time, but
That's fine. Yeah.
we'll ask you to review it and make sure that it's
Okay.
acceptable for you.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. And
Thank you. Thank you all for being here with me. I'm really surprised for such a good turnout. Thank you.
Yeah. See you all soon.
Bye-bye.